You're not always going to look like you're the clean guy. But God's not worried about image, which we're going to go into. So what's more important? Following God's commands or our image of what we look like? Would we rather look self-righteous, or would we rather be doing what God's telling us to do? And some people just look at you and go, what are you doing? You're crazy, you're not. So that's part one, that Jesus had a problem with. You're living with this, what's put on a show, what's put on this image of self-righteousness, of us being clean. We're better than everyone else. And then he turns around and he gets a group. So he's making a point. When Jesus usually gets a group, he's making a point, and he wants to make sure everyone understands this point, that they hear it. He had a problem with the word unclean. Because I noticed that in the NIV, if you notice in the beginning of the chapter, it has two quotation marks. They're unclean, they're dirty, right? Their hands were dirty, correct? No. Right? They did not wash them. If they are not washed, they are dirty. I mean, that's logically, we can come to that conclusion. But that's not what the Pharisees meant when they used the word unclean. When they used it, they meant it in a spiritual way. They are unclean. Because they didn't wash their hands and they ate food, they are now unclean before God. And he had an issue. So he turns around. Well, he didn't turn around. He pulls the crowd. I like saying turns around. But he pulls the crowd. He says, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside of man can make him unclean, but by going into him. Rather, it's what comes out of the man that makes him unclean. Or, to give you more of an imagery, the message gives you, listen now, all of you, take this to heart. It's not what you swallow that pollutes your life, it's what you vomit that's the real pollution. To kind of give you this imagery. And if we go down, the crowd goes away, and the disciples are sitting back and go, huh? We didn't get that. So, Jesus, what you're telling us is, if we were to eat something and then it comes out of us, that's unclean. So we shouldn't. That's what makes us unclean spiritually, is the stuff that comes out. So if I vomit it, or I go to the bathroom and it comes out, that made me unclean. This is what they're literally thinking. These are the disciples. They are fishermen. They are not scholars. So they turn to Jesus and go, "You need to define this for us. We don't understand this. We really don't. Please, just describe what's going on. What are you talking about?" And you read in this little paragraph, he gets rather perturbed and goes, "Are you so dull? Or like, are you really trying to act stupid? Because you really got to try hard on this one." But he turns and he tells them, it's not what comes in, but what comes out. And let me tell you what comes out. It's all these sins. It's these evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, malice, mace. All these things he mentions. And he goes, and the source of that all is your heart. So he separates it. One, nothing outside can make anyone unclean in a spiritual sense. Now, if we were to break it down logically, I can't throw an unclean thing at like Zach over here and go, you're unclean before God. I can't do anything to you to make you unclean before God. No one else outside can make you unclean. That makes me comfortable. Because if someone makes a huge mistake and does something to me, hurts me, does something in a damaging way, that did not do anything with with how God views me. No matter what wrongs have been done to me in my life, that did not do anything in God's sight to me. But rather, he says, it's your heart. It's you who make yourself unclean. And I think, what is this heart he talks about? We use this word. You know, that player has a lot of heart. Look at that chase up there. He's got heart. What's that mean? Like that kid out there, he's showing a lot of heart. And I think, if I were to break it down, I would say your innermost desire, what's your first instinct, your innermost desire right here of what you want to do is the heart. So an unclean heart when you can display this, and what is your first reaction when something happens? So if someone were to sideswipe your car, what's your first reaction? Because that will be a great indicator of how clean your heart is. Is it on that other person who hit you, or is it, look at the damage that's been done to me? That's a heart indicator. He turns around and he makes it rather difficult. He says, it's not your actions, but it's your heart. Now, why is our heart so corrupt? Why is it like this? Anyone want to take a shot? Why is our heart like this? We're human, and being human, something happened a long, long time ago. Original sin, right? You guys understand the concept of original sin, that when Adam and Eve were created, they fell from God. They decided not to follow God when He said, don't partake of this fruit. They did it. And sin came in. And there are many, that sin can be viewed as a substance that attaches itself to us. Sin is also seen as the corruption of the good. Any good desire God put into us, it's been corrupted. So, and then lastly, it broke the relationship. So I look at this, and Jesus tells us, what makes us unclean before God is your heart. And we're doing the theological side. This is why we're unclean, because we fell. Now what happened? How did God solve this problem? He sent Jesus, right? Jesus died. Jesus paid the price. You guys remember that story? Jesus saved us, right? I pulled Dudley out of the lake, out of the mud from dying. Was Dudley still dirty? Are we not still dirty? Yes. And this is where we have a great man who was one of the main influences of the United Methodist Church, the Methodist Church. His name was John Wesley. And this is what separates us from other churches, our focus in on this holiness tradition, this holiness thought. And the thing is, God saved us. God got us out of the mud. He got us out of that. But now we're dirty. God's got to clean us. We got to get clean. Our innermost thoughts and desires need to be cleaned out. Now, Phil, how would you say such a thing? What is your scriptural background on this? Well, if we look in Philippians, Paul tells us God began a work in you that He will see completed at the end of the coming of Jesus Christ. So, and he also tells the group in Philippi and the church of Philippi that you need to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. To get this, God saved you, yes. He pulled you out of that sin. You're no longer bound by that trap of death. You're no longer bound by that, but you're still dirty. And God's going to clean you up. Because can we clean us? No. Can a free man? No. Now, if a slave wanted to get out, wanted to pay his debt, could he? No, he's a slave. A slave can't free a slave, but a free man can free a slave. God freed us. He paid it. He said, you are a slave to sin. I'm free to it. I will pay your price. Brought us out. And now, through this journey we call life, God's cleaning us up. God's getting in our heart, because I can't fix my heart. I can't change it. God alone can change it. And that's what separates us, the big church word. I'd like to teach the teens the big church words, what they mean, would be sanctification. We're getting sanctified. God's cleaning our desires. He's cleaning our hearts. So that way, when someone does sideswipe me, by no credit to me am I able to say, are you okay? That's God. That's God fixing me up. God changing me to be more like Him. God making me clean.